for years, when I would read this book, I'd have these convictions that I just felt like God wanted me to say to everyone and preach it exactly like it's written here. And how many times did I chicken out and kind of soften it or twist it a little bit, or because I still wanted to be liked? Or do you sometimes read this book and then look at the church and go, man, I don't even know where to start? See, for years, I would read this book, and there's times when I'd read, okay, so that's the way the early church is, this is the way that. And I would be like, oh, man, I'm looking at the church and going, what do I do? What do I say? It's so radically different from what I'm experiencing. But then I'd go to church, and everyone seems fine with it. So I just kind of go, well, they're not bugged by it. I'll go to conferences, oh, everyone's cool with the way church is. Yeah, But when I was alone, man, I'm just going, man, what are we doing? Like, I sometimes feel like we're playing a game. I almost feel like, I feel like it would be like walking into an ice skating rink and seeing a bunch of people throwing fish at little hamsters that are running around. And you walk in and you go, what are you guys doing? And they go, we're playing soccer. And you just kind of go, oh, where do I start with this? I feel like that in church sometimes, especially Bible Belt church. I'm serious. I'm sorry, but at least in California, if we don't believe in Jesus, we'll say it, Here it's like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, we all get dressed up, yeah, and we do this whole, we don't swear a whole lot, we don't drink a whole lot, and we come read the Bible, sing some songs, and go home, and that's church. And then I read the Word of God, and I read the Bible, I'm going, I don't even know where to start. Come on, you guys, you felt that before. Where you look at the church and you look at Scripture. I mean, this morning I read through the book of Acts again. I don't see, it doesn't seem like the same thing. You call that an unstoppable force? You call that a church where the gates of hell will not prevail against it? Man, get rid of the building, get rid of the building, get rid of the building, get rid of the building. People, would you still have a church? And I'm going, wait, these are followers of Jesus? Think about this, followers of Jesus. You mean the same Jesus that said, what, you want to go bury your dad? Forget you. That Jesus? We're followers of him? The same Jesus that said, what, you're going to say goodbye to your family? You can't be my disciple. The same Jesus that said, you know what, the birds have nests, the foxes have holes, but I have nowhere to sleep. You still want to follow me? That Jesus? So that's what we have in the church. These are followers of Jesus Christ. Come on. Really? That's what followers of Jesus look like? You change this program, I'm gone. Someone bugs me in the church and I'm gone. I said, I really believe that if Jesus had a church in Simi Valley, my church would be bigger. Because there are people who will follow me that would never have followed Jesus. His words were too harsh. He never could keep a crowd like I can. He can't. And I'm just sitting there going, man, what am I doing? I mean, that's really hard to hear, isn't it? Like you think, I mean, that was a really hard realization to me because I'm going, man, I'm the one that led this thing. I'm the one that built it to this point. And now I'm going, man, what did I do? Man, am I really preaching like Jesus preached? And I remember just going, okay, how did Jesus teach? I'm just done with that. I'm done with it. How did Jesus teach? And I remember looking at Luke chapter 8, when there were crowds following Jesus. This is in Luke chapter 8. Jesus sees the crowd, it says in Luke 8, verse 4. He says this parable. He goes, a sower went out to sow his seed. And as he sowed, some fell along the path, was trampled underfoot. The birds of the air devoured it. Some fell on the rock. As it grew up, it withered away because it had no moisture. Some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up with it and choked it. And some fell in good soil and grew and yielded 100-fold. And as he said these things, he called out, he who has ears, let him hear. And then he walked off. Do you understand how weird that is? You've just walked for miles to get to this guy because you hear the miracles and everything else. And then Jesus comes up in front of thousands of people and goes, yeah, this farmer was throwing a seed out. Some landed on a hard path and birds ate it. Some landed on the rocks. It sprouted up and died. Others went in the thorns, got choked out. And then there was good soil and it just sprouted out. If you get it, you get it. See, that blew my mind because all my life I grew up hearing, oh, the parables are great stories. It was a teaching tool of Jesus so people could really get it. Like, why would Jesus confuse a crowd of people that came to him? Because I'm the opposite. I'm stressed out and I want everyone to get it. Jesus says, no, I deliberately confuse them, and he explains why in the parable of the sower. He goes, because what's the point? Okay, if I'm a farmer and I throw a bunch of seed on the sidewalk, what am I going to do? Keep watering the sidewalk? No, I'm going to say forget it. If I throw some on the rock, you know what? And you know it's never going to last. You know the root's not getting in. So what am I going to do? Water and fertilize it forever, knowing that one day, once it gets difficult, they're going to ditch me anyways? And I just feel like, man, we spend a lot of time and energy fertilizing rocks. A lot of money goes into fertilizing rocks, into thorns, and everything else. Because you know why? Because I'm scared to preach like Jesus. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get in front of a crowd of thousands and be left with, a dozen people at the end. I just don't. Let's read a few chapters later when there's another crowd. Luke 14. Great crowds come. Verse 25, he turns and says to them, he goes, hey, if anyone comes to me and doesn't hate his father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, yeah, even your own life, you can't be my disciple. And if you don't bear your own cross and come after me, you can't be my disciple. Nice introduction. See, I get excited about crowds. I do. I like a full room, but Jesus, when he saw crowds, he didn't get excited. He got skeptical. He goes, man, how many of you guys are the good soil? Most of you guys, you're just going to, you'll make some decision to follow me, but the moment it gets difficult, you're going to die. The wind's going to blow you, here, there, everything else. See, if Jesus were in this room, he would say, okay, I'm going to walk out that door. And if you want to follow me, understand that when I walk out that door, you may never see your family again. You ready to follow me? You ready to let go of all of that? Am I like this treasure you find in a field where you're like, man, I'll just give I gotta have you wherever you go. And he says, outside that door, you don't know what's outside that door. Maybe outside that door are a bunch of crosses. And maybe this afternoon, we're each going to pick up a cross and walk up the closest hill. And we're going to be crucified together. You still want to follow me? That's what Jesus said. That's the way Jesus preached. He looks at this group of people and he goes, what am I going to do with a bunch of people that won't go to the cross with me? What am I going to do with a bunch of salt that doesn't have flavor? So I'm reading this stuff, and I'm looking at Jesus, and I'm just going, man, doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm watering rocks. Maybe I'm with a bunch of flavorless salt. Let me ask you something. I'm going to put a little salt in my pocket. Now let's say I got a little bit of salt. See it? See that? Okay, let's say this is real salt. Okay? This is real salt. It's got flavor. It's just a little bit of it, but this is the real salt. Now let's suppose I have a container of flavorless salt. Okay, let's say this is a bunch of salt that has no flavor. what would be the point of taking this good salt and then going like this? Can you see any reason for doing that? I do. So you can walk around and go, look how big my pile is. See, I like doing that. How big's your pile? Look how big my pile is. We like this. Come on, let's just be honest. Don't you like this? I like big crowds. I cannot lie. you other pastors can't deny. It's just this, isn't it true? We like it. I enjoy a full room. I do. I love it. I hate when people leave the church. It's really difficult, and that's the struggle I went through when I was hanging out with my wife a couple of years ago, going, I don't know what to do. I mean, I know what to do, but I'm scared to do it. I don't know if I have the courage to just say everything I'm feeling right now. And I mean, it bugged me so much, I left the church. I told the church, I go, I don't even know if I'm for real. I got to just get away. And I don't know if I'm coming back. And 12 years I invested into this. And I loved it, but I didn't have peace. I never totally had peace. And the Lord gave me a love for the church. And the Lord did say, come back and just say it all. And just say it. Just throw it out there. And I remember just saying it when I came back. Just saying everything.